At 6:04 a.m., I was standing barefoot on my kitchen tile, holding a mug that said "World's Okayest Daughter," when a deputy sheriff knocked on my door and asked for me by my full name. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He just handed me an eviction notice and said, "You've got 30 days." What made my hands shake wasn't the deadline. It was the name listed as property owner. It wasn't a landlord. It was my parents. Stick with me. I stood there for a long moment after the door closed, staring at the paper like it might change if I blinked. The house was quiet. The morning sun came in through the small window over the sink. Everything looked normal. That was the worst part. My parents' house sat just a few steps away, exactly where it had always been, like nothing had happened. I was living in the guest house behind their place in a quiet Ohio suburb. It wasn't free. I paid for electricity, water, internet. I fixed the leaky sink myself. I bought the fridge when the old one died. I thought this was temporary. A soft place to land after my breakup and a bad year at work. My parents had said, "Take your time." I believed them. The eviction notice said it had been filed 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks. While we were still having Sunday dinners. While my mom hugged me and asked if I was eating enough. While my dad texted me reminders to drive safe. Not once did they mention this. I sat down on the edge of my bed and folded the papers carefully, like they were fragile. My first feeling wasn't anger. It was confusion. I kept replaying every recent conversation, looking for a crack, a warning, anything I had missed. There was nothing. That was when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't about money or space. It was planned. They didn't want a discussion. They wanted me gone, quietly, officially, without confrontation. Like paperwork could erase a daughter. I looked around the small room I had taken care of, the place I thought was mine for now. My chest felt tight, but something else settled in too. A calm I didn't expect. This wasn't about a guest house. It was about control. And I finally understood my role had already been replaced. I unfolded the notice again, smoothed it flat, and made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't panic. If they chose paperwork over honesty, I would answer in the same language. Carefully. And completely. That evening, I walked up to my parents' back door with the eviction notice folded in my bag. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow. My mom opened the door like nothing was wrong. She smiled, asked if I wanted dinner. That hurt more than anger would have. We sat at the kitchen table. My dad stayed standing, arms crossed. I placed the eviction notice between us. No yelling. No drama. Just paper. My mom sighed like she'd been waiting for this moment. My dad didn't look surprised at all. "We were going to tell you," he said quickly. "When?" I asked. "After the sheriff showed up again?" They exchanged a look. It felt practiced. Rehearsed. Like they had already decided how this conversation would go. My mom said I was too sensitive. My dad said this was just practical. They talked about timelines and plans, not feelings. I kept asking the same question in different ways, and finally my mom said it. "Aaron needs the space." Aaron, my younger cousin, 24, still living at home. Always praised. Always compared to me. "She's more stable right now," my dad added. "And she's family-oriented. Settled." I nodded slowly, even though my ears were ringing. "So I'm not?" I asked. "That's not what we said," my mom replied too fast. But it was exactly what they meant. They said Erin wanted to start fresh. That she needed support. That she had plans. When I asked why no one talked to me first, my dad said, "We knew you'd take it personally." That sentence stayed with me. They didn't deny choosing her. They didn't apologize for hiding it. They acted like this was a natural upgrade. Like replacing an old appliance. Useful once, inconvenient now. I realized then that I had already lost this place long before the notice arrived. I just wasn't told. When I stood up to leave, my mom finally reached for my hand. I pulled away. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I wasn't being pushed out because I failed. I was being pushed out because I didn't fit the version of daughter they wanted anymore. As I walked back to the guest house, I looked at the lights in their kitchen window. They were already talking again, voices low, calm. I understood something painful and freeing at the same time. They hadn't replaced my room. They had replaced me. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat at the small desk in the guest house with my laptop open and my phone beside it. At first, I was just trying to distract myself. But then I started opening old emails, old texts, bank statements. Not with a plan, just with a need to understand what was real. That's when I saw it. The first charge was from 2 years ago, a payment to a contractor for the bathroom floor. I remembered how my dad had said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it," and then never did. I paid because I needed the shower fixed. There was the receipt, my name, my card, then the fridge. I had bought it when the old one stopped working. I found the delivery confirmation and the warranty email. Registered to me. Not them. I kept scrolling. Electric repairs. New shelves. The water heater service. Small things that added up fast. Things my parents now talked about like they had done me a favor. Like they had invested in me. I realized something important. They weren't just pushing me out. They were keeping what I paid for. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't panic. It was focus. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Records. I saved screenshots of texts where my mom thanked me for handling the repairs. Messages where my dad said, "We'll settle up later." Later never came, but the words were there. I printed statements. I backed everything up to a drive. I took photos of the appliances with serial numbers visible. Each click made things clearer. Not louder. Clearer. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. I wasn't planning to storm into their house or demand anything back. I just wanted to stop feeling helpless. I wanted proof that I hadn't imagined my role in this place. For so long, I had accepted being quiet to keep peace. I paid without asking. Fixed things without reminding. I told myself that family didn't keep score. But they did. They just kept it differently. By the time the sun came up, my folder was full. My hands were tired, but my mind was steady. I looked around the guest house again, not as a temporary shelter, but as a record of my effort. Every improvement had my fingerprints on it. They could call it theirs. They could pretend they had provided everything. But now I had something they didn't expect. Facts. And for the first time since the knock on my door, I felt protected. I stared at my phone for almost an hour before making the call. The number was written on a sticky note I had carried around all day. A local attorney. Someone a coworker once mentioned. I felt embarrassed even dialing. It felt like admitting I had failed as a daughter. When his assistant answered, my voice shook. I almost hung up. The office was small and quiet. Nothing fancy. The attorney listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The guest house. The payments. The eviction notice with my parents' names on it. I kept apologizing, like I was wasting his time. He stopped me gently. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. That was the first relief I'd felt in days. He asked questions I hadn't thought to ask. How long I'd lived there. Whether money ever changed hands. If there were texts or emails. I showed him the folder on my laptop. He read carefully, nodding. "This isn't as simple as they think," he said. He explained that verbal agreements matter. That regular payments matter. That listing false information on a notice matters. He didn't promise a win. He didn't hype anything up. He just told the truth. "If you challenge this," he said, "they're not going to like it." I laughed quietly. "They already don't." He shook his head. "This is different. When people realize they might lose control, they escalate." That word stuck with me. Escalate. I left the office with mixed feelings. Relief, yes, but also dread. Because pushing back meant accepting that my parents would fight me instead of listening. 2 days later, they proved him right. My internet went out without warning. Then the power flickered and stayed off. When I texted my dad, he replied hours later. "Utility issues happen. You'll figure it out." The next morning, my mom showed up unannounced, letting herself into the guest house like she still owned my space. She commented on my boxes. Asked when I was finally moving on. Her tone was light, almost cheerful. I saw it clearly then. They weren't confused. They weren't hurt. They were trying to pressure me. That night, I emailed the attorney again. Short. Direct. I told him things were changing. He replied quickly. "Document everything." I looked around the dark room, lit by a single lamp. My parents' house glowed next door, warm and bright. The lawyer had been right. The moment I stopped being silent, they stopped pretending. And this was only the beginning. After the utilities started acting strange, things shifted fast. It wasn't loud or obvious. It was small, sharp moves meant to wear me down. The hot water would disappear in the middle of a shower. The outdoor lights near the guest house stayed off at night. When I asked, my dad shrugged and said, "Old wiring. These things happen." I stopped asking. One afternoon, I came home and found the door unlocked. My mom was inside, rearranging the cabinets like it was still her space. She smiled when she saw me, like this was normal. "We were just checking on things," she said. "You know, making sure everything's okay." I nodded and said nothing. After she left, I took photos. The open drawers. The moved boxes. The timestamp on my phone. At dinner a few nights later, my dad brought up my timeline. He asked it casually in front of my aunt. "So, what's the plan?" he said. "You can't stay stuck forever." The word stuck landed hard. My mom added, "Erin's really excited to settle in. She has goals." I smiled politely. Inside, something hardened. They wanted me embarrassed. They wanted me uncomfortable enough to leave quietly. To disappear so they wouldn't have to look like the bad ones. Instead, I got organized. I kept a notebook by my bed. Dates. Times. Short notes. Power out at 9:15 p.m. Door entered without notice. Comments made in front of others. I didn't write feelings. Just facts. I installed a small camera inside, facing the door. I checked my accounts daily. I forwarded every utility email to a separate folder. I stopped reacting. The calmer I became, the more obvious their behavior looked. One morning, my mom said, "People are starting to ask questions." I met her eyes. "About what?" "About why you're still here." I nodded slowly. "They can ask." That was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting to stay. I was preparing to leave correctly. Not rushed. Not ashamed. Not empty-handed. Late that night, I sat on my bed with my laptop open and my notes beside me. I wasn't planning a scene. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning control. They thought pressure would make me smaller. Instead, it gave me clarity. If they wanted me gone so badly, I would go. But I would leave behind something they couldn't step over, ignore, or erase. And I would make sure of it. They called it a family meeting, like that word alone was supposed to make it safe. My mom said it would be good for everyone to talk. My dad said we needed clarity. I knew better, but I went anyway. I needed to see it with my own eyes. When I walked into the living room, the chairs were already arranged in a circle. My aunt, my uncle, and 2 cousins were there. Erin wasn't, which told me everything. This wasn't about understanding. It was about pressure. My dad started talking first. He said I had always been difficult. Not in a loud way. Just enough to plant doubt. My mom followed by listing everything they had done for me. School clothes. Meals. A roof over my head growing up. "You didn't have to pay rent as a child," she said. I felt my face heat up, but I stayed quiet. Then came the word I expected. Ungrateful. My aunt shifted uncomfortably but nodded. My uncle avoided my eyes. No one interrupted. No one asked my side. It felt like a verdict that had already been written. My dad said, "We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us." That's when I understood. They didn't see raising me as love. They saw it as an investment. And now they believed I owed them returns. I tried to explain. I spoke calmly about the payments I made, the work I put into the guest house, the lack of warning. My mom waved her hand. "That's not the point," she said. "Family doesn't keep score." The room went quiet, but they had kept score. Every sacrifice. Every dollar. Every favor. They just expected me to stay silent about mine. One cousin cleared her throat and said, "Maybe you should just apologize. Keep the peace." That hurt more than the accusations. I looked around the room and realized something painful. This wasn't just my parents. This was how things worked in this family. Loyalty flowed upward. Gratitude was demanded, not earned. Questioning anything made you the problem. This wasn't emotional. It was transactional. When I stood up, my mom looked shocked. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. "I understand now," I said. "This isn't a conversation. It's a bill." No one stopped me as I walked out. In the car, my hands shook, but my mind was clear. I hadn't lost my family that night. I had finally seen the rules they'd been playing by all along. A few days after the family meeting, my dad asked to talk. Just the 2 of us. His voice was different on the phone. Quieter. Careful. I agreed, but only to meet in public. We sat at a small cafe near the highway, far from the house. He started with small talk. Weather. Traffic. Then he leaned in and said, "We need to wrap things up cleanly." I took a breath. This was the moment. "I agree," I said. "That's why I need to explain something." He frowned slightly, like he wasn't used to me leading the conversation. I told him about the utility accounts. How the electricity, water, and internet were in my name. How the warranties for the fridge and heater were registered to me because I paid for them. I spoke slowly, carefully, not accusing. Just facts. His jaw tightened. Then I mentioned the contractor invoices, the repairs that were never transferred to their name, the receipts that listed me as the paying party. There's also a small issue with the property taxes, I added. Nothing huge, just a filing error. But it's connected to one of my payments. That's when his face changed. He asked me what I meant. I told him the truth. If I corrected everything on my end, it would force updates on theirs. Questions. Adjustments. Paperwork they didn't want anyone looking too closely at. I wasn't threatening. I didn't need to. For the first time since this started, my dad didn't look angry or confident. He looked scared. He rubbed his hands together and said, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm leaving," I replied. "And I'm fixing what's in my name." He leaned back, silent. I realized then that they had counted on me staying quiet. On me not knowing. On me being too emotional or too ashamed to notice details. They never expected me to understand how things actually worked. When I stood to leave, my dad finally spoke. "We can figure something out." I met his eyes. "You already did. Without me." As I walked out, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. Just one line. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't reply. That night, I updated my records and scheduled the changes. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I felt calm. They had tried to control me with silence and pressure. But now they knew something important. I wasn't powerless. And I wasn't invisible anymore. I found the apartment on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't big, but it was clean and bright, with windows that faced the street instead of my parents' backyard. I signed the lease the same day. No one knew. I didn't announce it. I didn't ask for help. I moved carefully after that. I scheduled everything in advance. Movers for one morning. Utility transfers for the same week. Change of address forms. Each task went into a list, and I checked them off one by one. I never told my parents when I was leaving. While they waited for me to argue or beg, I worked quietly. I closed the utility accounts in my name. I transferred warranties properly. I sent documentation to the contractors and corrected the records. I filed the tax amendment tied to my payments, clean and accurate. I didn't add comments. I didn't point fingers. I let the paperwork speak. Within days, the emails started coming. Notices about account changes. Requests for clarification. Fees for delayed updates. Repair issues that now belonged fully to the homeowner. Not me. My parents asked questions without asking questions. My mom texted, "Are you changing things already?" My dad left a voicemail saying, "Let's slow down." I didn't respond. On moving day, I packed what was mine and nothing more. The fridge hum faded behind me. The shelves I installed stayed. I locked the door and set the keys on the counter. No note. No goodbye. I felt lighter than I expected. At my new place, I turned on the lights and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. For the first time in weeks, there was no tension in my chest. No fear of footsteps outside. No waiting for permission to exist. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Missed calls. Messages asking me to explain. To fix things. To help. I didn't. I had spent years fixing things quietly. This time I was done. I didn't fight the eviction. I didn't make a scene. I didn't need to. I left on my own terms. And behind me, my parents were left holding the mess they created. Paperwork they couldn't undo, responsibility they couldn't shift, and a silence they hadn't planned for. For the first time, the space between us felt honest. And it felt like freedom. The call came late in the evening, after days of silence. I almost didn't answer. When I saw my mother's name on the screen, my stomach tightened, but I picked up. She started crying before she even said hello. Her voice sounded small. Tired. She apologized in broken pieces, not all at once. She said things had gotten out of hand. She said she was overwhelmed. She blamed stress, paperwork, confusion. She said she never meant to hurt me. I didn't interrupt. I sat on the edge of my couch and listened. I let the pauses stretch. I let her fill them. She talked about fees they didn't expect. Repairs they couldn't delay. Notices that kept coming in the mail. She said she didn't understand why everything was so complicated all of a sudden. I understood exactly why. I just didn't explain. When she finally stopped crying, she asked the question I knew was coming. "So, when are you coming back?" There was hope in her voice. Like this phone call was a reset. Like tears could rewind everything. I took a breath before answering. "I'm not," I said. The silence on the line was heavy. She whispered my name, like I hadn't heard her. I'm settled, I continued. I'm okay, but I'm not coming back. She started crying again, harder this time. She said families fight. She said mistakes happen. She said I was making things worse by staying away. I stayed calm. This didn't start with a fight, I said. It started with paperwork. She didn't respond to that. I told her I hoped things worked out for them. That I wasn't angry. That I just needed distance. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say I would try again. She asked if we could go back to how things were. I said, there is no back. When we hung up, my hands were steady. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel cruel. I felt clear. Closure didn't come from her apology. It came from my answer. I sat there for a while, staring at the wall, letting the quiet settle. I realized something important. I didn't need her to understand my choice for it to be right. I didn't need tears to prove love. Some endings aren't loud. They don't come with forgiveness or hugs or promises. They come with a calm voice, a firm no, and the strength to mean it. Life didn't change all at once after that call. It changed quietly, in small, steady ways. I learned my new routines. I paid my own bills. I fixed things when they broke. I built a life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I didn't check my phone as often anymore. My parents still had the house. The guest house still stood behind it. Aaron moved in, just like they planned. From the outside, it probably looked like everything worked out for them. But something was missing. I wasn't there to smooth things over. I wasn't there to fix problems quietly or pay for things without asking questions. I wasn't there to absorb tension and call it family. They lost that. They lost the daughter who showed up early and stayed late. The one who handled details so no one else had to. The one who kept things together while being told she wasn't enough. I didn't announce my distance. I didn't make rules or demands. I simply stopped reaching out. When holidays came, I made other plans. When birthdays passed, I sent short messages instead of gifts. Polite, controlled, distant. It wasn't revenge. It was boundaries. I noticed how light I felt, how calm my days were. I slept better. I trusted my own choices. I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. Sometimes I thought about the guest house, the money I spent, the years I tried. Those thoughts didn't hurt the way they used to. They felt finished. I understood something clearly now. I hadn't been difficult. I hadn't been ungrateful. I had just been useful. And when I stopped being useful, I was replaceable. Walking away didn't destroy my parents. It didn't ruin their lives. It didn't need to. What it did was remove the one thing they counted on without realizing it. Me. They could keep the property. They could keep their version of the story. They could tell themselves whatever helped them sleep. But they no longer had my trust. They no longer had my loyalty. They no longer had access to my life. That was the consequence. I didn't win by fighting them. I won by no longer holding them together. And that quiet choice changed everything. If this story moved you, remember, know your rights, document everything, and never ignore paperwork, especially when family is involved. Emotional pressure doesn't cancel legal reality. Protect yourself with facts, not fear. Like, subscribe, and share to help others learn boundaries, self-respect, and smart decision-making through real-life lessons.